Mr. President, 4G technology is pretty amazing. When I talk about 4G technology, that stands for fourth generation, or on your smartphone it might say LTE, but it's the fourth generation of technology that we have available to us in our wireless devices. We can FaceTime with family members across the country, order dinner or groceries without leaving our couch, watch a football game on the go with our phones, adjust the heat in our houses before we actually get home, carry around an entire library in a tablet the size of one small book, deposit a check without actually visiting the bank, and the list goes on. But as amazing as 4G technology is, it can't hold a candle to 5G, fifth generation technology. 5G mobile broadband technology will deliver speeds that are up to 100 times faster than what today's technology can deliver. Think about that, Mr. President, 100 times faster downloads than what we have today. We'll be vastly more responsive than 4G technology. We'll be able to connect to 100 times the number of devices that can be connected with 4G. That's pretty hard to imagine, really. Our phones and computers today seem pretty fast and responsive, but 5G will be much, much faster. And while that will make it even easier to do the things that we do today, like check our email or stream our favorite shows, the biggest benefits of 5G, Mr. President, lie in the other technologies that it will enable. For example, 5G has the potential to pave the way for the widespread adoption of precision agriculture, which uses tools like robotics and remote monitoring to help farmers manage their fields and boost their crop yields. The U.S. Department of Agriculture estimates that precision agriculture will reduce farmers' operational costs by up to $25 per acre and increase farmers' yields by up to 70% by the year 2050. 5G will pave the way for automated vehicles, which have the potential to dramatically reduce traffic injuries and fatalities. So there's 37,000 people lost every year on America's highways due to traffic accidents. Over 90% of those are a result of human error, driving under the influence, driving while distracted. 5G technology and the enablement of automated vehicles will go a long ways towards saving lives on America's highways. It will facilitate surgical innovations and new ways to treat chronic illnesses or heal injuries, and so much more. The technology for 5G, Mr. President, is already here. Several cities around the United States, including my hometown of Sioux Falls, have already unveiled limited 5G networks. But there's more work to do before we all can start to see the benefits of 5G on our phones. The widespread deployment of 5G will require two things: adequate spectrum and adequate infrastructure. While 4G relies on traditional cell phone towers, 5G technology will also require small antennas called small cells that can often be attached to existing infrastructure like utility poles or buildings. Earlier this year, I introduced legislation called the Streamline Act to make it easier for companies to deploy these small cells so that we can get the infrastructure in place for 5G technology. I've also spent a lot of time focusing on securing adequate spectrum for 5G. Last year, the President signed into law my bipartisan bill called the Mobile Now Act. It was legislation that I had introduced to help secure adequate spectrum and to facilitate next-generation infrastructure. And tomorrow, in my role as chairman of the Commerce Subcommittee on Communications Technology, Innovation, and the Internet, I'll be chairing a hearing looking at the progress that has been made in implementing the Mobile Now Act. We have a great slate of witnesses testifying tomorrow, including Sioux Falls Mayor Paul Tenhaken, who has driven the implementation of advanced mobile broadband technology in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. The Mobile Now Act has helped us make progress toward the deployment of 5G, particularly in identifying licensed spectrum that can be used to support 5G deployment in more rural areas of the country. Mobile Now also recognized the critical role that unlicensed spectrum plays in the development of 5G and in the larger communications landscape. Wi-Fi operating on unlicensed spectrum will have an increasing role as we continue to connect more devices in the 5G era. There's more work to be done, though. While we've made good progress on securing low and high band spectrum, China and South Korea are ahead of us in opening up mid-band spectrum for 5G. We don't want to lose out to China and South Korea on 5G. And so we need to substantially increase the amount of mid-band spectrum available to U.S. companies. Senator Wicker and I recently introduced legislation to facilitate the rapid acquisition of mid-band spectrum. Our 5G Spectrum Act would bring a substantial amount of mid-band spectrum to market for the U.S. companies ready to deploy robust 5G networks. Mr. President, in addition to fostering tremendous technological breakthroughs in everything from agriculture to energy, 5G has the potential to add $500 billion to the economy and to create literally millions of new jobs. But in order to achieve those economic benefits, we need to stay at the head of the 5G revolution. The United States lagged behind other countries in deploying 2G and 3G technology, which had real economic consequences. Europe, for example, took the lead in 2G and cornered most of the market in sales of networking equipment and telecom hardware. As 4G emerged, however, the United States wireless industry stepped forward, investing billions in 4G deployment. The government also took steps to support the wireless industry, freeing up spectrum and making it easier to deploy the necessary infrastructure. Mr. President, that's what we've got to do again today. If we want to stay at the head of the race to 5G, the government needs to make sure that wireless companies have access to the necessary spectrum and the ability to efficiently deploy small cell infrastructure. Mr. President, we are right on the edge of the 5G revolution, and I am confident that the United States can lead the world in 5G just like we did with 4G. We just need to take the last few steps to enable widespread 5G deployment. And I look forward to talking with individuals on the front lines of 5G deployment at the hearing tomorrow. And I will continue to work with my colleagues to ensure that both the spectrum and the infrastructure are in place for 5G technology. Mr. President, I yield the floor, and I see